Republicans aren't having a good time, especially right now related to Kamala Harris's pick of Tim Walz to be the vice presidential nominee on the ticket. They don't know what to do. In fact, they're trying to create distractions about a whole bunch of other issues unrelated to Tim Walz, or I guess tangentially related to Tim Walz. And it relates to who Kamala Harris didn't choose as VP. And there is a movement afoot among Republicans to try to paint the Democratic Party as the party of anti-Semitism, and giving that as the reason that Josh Shapiro, a Jew, a governor of Pennsylvania, wasn't picked. Josh Shapiro doesn't feel like it's that. The host of other elected Jewish Democrats don't feel like that. Tim Walz was the obvious choice for Kamala Harris. Early on, I said that I was hoping it would be Mark Kelly. And then as soon as Tim Walz came on the scene and started making media appearances, it became very clear that my original desire, my original choice, wasn't the right one. And I very quickly, we talked about this on episode 922 of I Doubt It podcast in a lot fuller length. You should check that out. But so this is what they're going with. And yesterday, former MSNBC news host Medhi Hasan was on CNN on a panel, and one of the Republicans is just going through and marching through with this particular talk track that has been given to them by the Republican establishment, and it did not go well. Medhi Hasan it was just carnage in the wake of a litany of rapid fire reasons why it's not anti-Semitism. And in fact, to look at the Republican Party, if you want to know what the party of hatred and bigotry and racism and anti-Semitism is. First, I'll give you his answer, and then we're going to cut to the immediate aftermath of that, throwing it to Brian Lanza and having him just step all over his anatomy, we'll say, in his answer. First, the brilliant Medhi Hasan.
But I want to ask you, Medhi, because as you pointed out, governing, the decision that she made is also being used to criticize her and her viewpoints in the Democratic Party. They're talking less from the Republican side about Tim Walz and more about the decision not to choose Josh Shapiro as the governor. And the word anti-Semitism is coming up as some basis to substantiate that criticism. What's your reaction?
I mean, it's one of the most, one of the dumbest and most dangerous lies that we've heard from the Republicans in recent days. Obviously, the call went out on one of a right-wing WhatsApp group because they're all doing it. Ari Fleischer, Newt Gingrich, they've all been out. Nikki Haley, Ted Cruz, they've all been piling in. But it's anti-Semitic. I think Eric Erickson said today, there's no Jews at the top of the Democratic Party allowed, to which Chuck Schumer responded, news to me. And it's not just the Senate Majority Leader who is Jewish Democrat, by the way. All 10 Jewish senators in the United States Senate are Democrats. 24 of the 27 House members who are Jewish are Democrats. All 4 governors in America who are Jewish are Democrats. The Secretary of State, the Treasury Secretary, the Attorney General, the Homeland Security Secretary, and the Second Gentleman are all Jewish Democrats. So it's a nonsense slide. That's the Democratic Party's record. Look at the Republican Party record. Vance is saying this is anti-Semitic. The guy is running alongside Donald Trump, the most openly anti-Semitic presidential candidate we've seen in our lifetimes. This is a guy who hosted a Holocaust denier for dinner at his home less than 2 years ago, who says American Jews are disloyal to Israel, constantly says that, who famously praised Nazis, saying Jews will not replace us as very fine people, who last week was on a radio show where he agreed with the host calling Doug Emhoff a crappy Jew. Today he called Adam Schiff Shifty Schiff. So Republicans really need to sit this one out. I mean, Vance himself has defended Marjorie Taylor Greene, she of Jewish space lasers fame. So the idea that they want to make this an issue, good luck to them.
Good luck to them. That is exactly right. That, my friends, is brilliant oration, a brilliant recitation of exactly the problems that the Republicans face, and they're either blind to it or they understand the lay of the land, that MAGA world doesn't give 2 shits about what the reality is about their party. Because Josh Shapiro wasn't picked for a series of political calculi, not because he's a Jew. Tim Walz was picked because of what he brings to the table. veteran, command sergeant major, teacher, football coach, governor, congressman. He has a width and breadth of experience that really nobody else did. And he can communicate complex ideas in clear, commonsensical ways. It was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer. So, Laura Coates here, and someone also I'm a fan of, she cuts to Brian Lanza. I don't know how to say his name. And he's a Trump stooge who's going to try to get away from the accusation and the facts that were just laid out by Medhi Hasan. In fact, he gets confronted. It's not just a Brian Lanza clip here. Medhi Hasan actually confronts him about some of the nonsense he's saying, trying to divert attention away from the fact that Donald Trump did indeed invite a Holocaust-denying Hitler lover, little Nazi puke, Nick Fuentes, and Kanye West to dinner on a holiday at his home. And he tries to, you know how they do. Anyway, here's that. This is where it gets hot.
Brian, what is your reaction to that? Because obviously Trump has come back to say that he is not anti-Semitic, that this is something, and that he'll point to his daughter, obviously his son-in-law as well, but one example of his love for them. What's your reaction to how this is playing politically?
You know, listen, I think the Republicans have sort of stepped back and watched the Democrats eat each other up with, what did the Democrats call him? Genocide Josh. You know, that wasn't a Republican term that came up. That was a Democratic term. A Democrat came up with that term to describe Josh Shapiro, a Jewish Democratic governor. So we're watching this debate take place. We're seeing them rip each other apart based on, you know, whether you can be pro-Israel or anti-Palestine or however the situation works out. But it's not the Republicans that are sort of pushing that. Genocide Josh came from the Democratic Party, from a Democrat operative, to try to slander, to try to slur Josh so he would be sort of disqualified of Kamala Harris. That wasn't a Republican thing. That's where the Democratic Party is now. You can look at the colleges' campuses where it was primarily Democratic young activists that were very much anti-Israel. They were saying, you know, we don't care that you were attacked. Well, I was just saying, you don't care that you were attacked. You don't care that there's still American hostages in Israel that are being held against their will. You know, and they were protesting. This is coming from within the Democratic Party. So to try to play it off as a Republican thing is just disingenuous.
You don't think there was a Holocaust denier in Donald Trump's home less than 2 years ago?
Sure, there absolutely was, and that person's an idiot. I'll be the first to tell you that. But what we're talking about right now,
Donald Trump's an idiot first.
No, the person who's this Holocaust denier, he's an idiot.
That's not what I asked. Why was he in Donald Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago?
You know, he invites a lot of non-traditional media folks, people. That guy owns a podcast, or he does a podcast, is my understanding.
It was Kanye and Fuentes, both Holocaust deniers.
Like I said, he goes to a lot of non-traditional media podcasts and has these conversations. I wouldn't do it, but that's what the campaign has made the decision. It's clearly worked. Remember, we got to the first debate with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden dropped out. He demanded the debate because he was behind, because of these Holocaust deniers, all these things. The language wasn't working. He needed a Hail Mary, and the Hail Mary failed. So all these things that are coming up landed with the Democratic Party first.
Something tells me that this topic is going to continue. It won't be resolved this particular evening.
One more time for the people in the back of the room. There's so much there. Obviously, it worked, he says. Obviously, inviting the Holocaust denier and leaning into racism and demagoguery works for the Republican Party. That's what he said. Obviously, it works. Obviously, calling Nazis who marched with their tiki torches screaming, "Jews will not replace us," and labeling them a very fine people, obviously it worked. And to the point of calling Josh Shapiro Genocide Josh, that's not a Democratic Party label on Josh Shapiro, because if it was, he's ignoring the fact that they also called Joe Biden and are still calling activists calling Joe Biden Genocide Joe. Is that also anti-Semitic that they're calling the Catholic president of the United States Genocide Joe, Brian Lanza? They got nothing. And the fact that they're not talking about Tim Walz, some are, and they're really leaning into the racism. And that's going to be what I talk about in a future video. I think it's going to post at 5 o'clock, just to give you how the sausage is made here. They're scrambling. because this is just a temporary until they can get their feet underneath them about what their talk track should be. This is just a temporary distraction to talk about Josh Shapiro. Because if you think in a month they're going to be talking about Josh Shapiro, they're not. They're not concerned about anti-Semitism. They don't believe that him not being picked is anti-Semitism. They're just liars who have no ability right now to take on Tim Walz and the presidential nominee, presumptive, Kamala Harris. They got nothing. Anyway, what do you think? I would love to know. You can call, leave me a voicemail, 714-576-4054. Of course, as always, you can email me daily at dollemore.com. I welcome your comments in the comments section. I welcome your subscriptions to subscribe to the channel and see what's going on a regular basis. Click the bell, be notified, all that stuff. I love and appreciate you very much. Follow me on social media. I'm at Dollemore. I'd love to see you there. And I'll see you next time. Until then, be genuine. Take care of one another.